So yeah, fire away any questions you have.
Sunny, do you want to know who did the music?
Who?
Yeah, but you might want to talk about the music.
Sure, yeah. Actually, the whole thing started as a song cycle, and I wrote all the music, and I sing and play all of it, actually. So it's me, and yeah, that's who did that. And that's how it all started. And in fact, I was just telling the story to Michelle. This all started as a song cycle, which I then turned into an art installation because I, like you, went to art school and not film school. And as I was presenting, or I don't know, maybe this is sort of the film program here? In between? Okay, so this is the perfect example of what can happen to you when you don't come out of film exactly. I was actually presenting this project as an art installation and song cycle and describing the story in Michelle's class about, 4 years ago now? Yeah. And one of the students was a film student, and afterwards he was like, I could see this really being a film if you scripted it out. And it was really funny. A student from SVA named Louis Smithingham really gave me the idea to pursue it. And you know, it came in with a number of other things, like having met Ham and a number of pieces, and I decided I would try to see if I could get fiscal sponsorship from the New York Foundation for the Arts. That would be like my first adult thing to do. And then when that happened, it was like, oh, okay, I can manage this somehow. But that's a longer description.
Maybe you said this earlier because I came a little late. How did you get this? What interested you in the story?
So how did it all start? No one's asked me that, and that actually is really interesting. I was a volunteer at Sing Sing, the art school, the prison that has an art program actually, which is super cool, called Rehabilitation Through the Arts. And I was teaching there, and kind of coinciding to that time, between like 2005 and 2010, I was asked to be in a little group exhibition in Peekskill at a place called the Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art. And I just decided to look up once and for all, you know, the different people who'd been executed at Sing Sing, because many people, maybe you guys know, it's a very notorious prison with like a very long track record of very notorious executions, like the Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were executed there. So I found this book on the Sing Sing prison executions, and one of them just stood out because he was the oldest person ever executed. So it was at the end of this list, and his name was Hamilton Fish. And it struck me as interesting. I don't remember what led me to think of it, but I looked him up, and he was the most horrific serial killer I've ever encountered to this day. And in fact, I eventually met the author of the book he went by Albert Fish, actually, but his given name was Hamilton Fish. And the author of the book about serial killers, called the A to Z Encyclopedia of Serial Killers, told me Albert Hamilton Fish is the #1 worst of all time. His crimes are so horrific. And as I was doing all this research into him, because he was also just fascinating, every single story. I don't know if you ever have the opportunity to look up a story in the 1930s, but newspaper articles and the way they wrote about the news back then is so interesting. The language is so colorful that as I was reading it, all of these songs came out of those early, like, yellow journalism. The names of the killer was called the Werewolf of Wisteria. It was printed in the paper. So a lot of the imagery for the songs came out of this. But as I was looking up the date of the execution of Hamilton Fish, the killer, I literally was looking at the page and I saw this little other article about Hamilton Fish. It says Hamilton Fish dies of a famous family in the South, and that's who Charles is referring to as Ham, who happens to be a very established personality in the political theater of New York, and his great-great-great-grandfather was Hamilton Fish II, and I know this because, so I'm not explaining it very well, but I had this newspaper for a long time, and I just had it. Thought it was really strange to see two people with the same name, but of such different backgrounds, that had died basically on the same day. And I had the opportunity to meet Ham completely serendipitously, and when I knew I was going to meet him, I took this article with me, and I just wanted to show it to him. I said, you know, I'd love to know what you think of this, because you might be the one person who would have something to say. And he looked at this newspaper and he said, well, that's my great-grandfather right there, definitely, but I don't know who that other person is. And that after this little encounter with Ham, I literally started getting these ideas together for the first song, which was originally called The Duel, because the name Hamilton Fish actually does extend from Alexander Hamilton. Ham's great-great-great-grandfather was a man named Nicholas Fish, who was the estate, the person that, what's it called, distributes the estate when someone dies. So he was the executor of the estate of Alexander Hamilton, and he named his son Hamilton in his honor. So that was a long answer. Anyone else have other?
Good answer.
Oh, okay. Thorough. Tried to get my bases covered.
So you say you normally perform live with the video?
Well, I've shown it both ways, yeah.
So does the video change at all when you're doing the live performance, or is it the same thing you just saw?
It's actually the same, but I perform in character, so I actually wear the exact same costume and makeup. So I deliberately do that, so I would never perform it like how I'm dressed now or in any other way. It's very much like as though the editor has stepped out of the screen. I will say one thing is that I have different edits of this film and a few different songs, and even watching this was a particular edit. So that sometimes changes, yeah.
And does it matter where you do that? Like, what kind of, because you've shown this in a lot of different venues. I mean, she just got back from Europe.
I got back from Europe, and the very first place this was ever shown was in Hong Kong, of all places, because I simply applied to a bunch of film festivals. And the first festival that got it, like actually understood and got it completely, was in Hong Kong, which kind of blew my mind because this is as far from Hong Kong as, anything else. And I just thought, wow, this is so strange. It's a story about New England, and they actually flew me there to perform with it. So they kind of gave me that first idea, this film festival, because I would have just happily sent it there. So they were so into it, and it's going to be. I just found out it got into Rain Dance, which is in London. Yay! So I'm very excited about that. But it's been a very long process to learn how to get into film festivals, and which if you have questions about that kind of thing, you can ask me. Although I have learned by failure, so doing things wrong.
How long did it take you to shoot the movie?
The whole production from, I think, start to end was like 6 weeks. Bless you. Maybe 8. We got a lot of great access to historic homes, and part of the reason was, I was able to tell them, like, this is a story that relates directly to your historic house, which is true. The Morris Jumel Mansion was in this, featured prominently, and that's an amazing place I would recommend going. And it's the home of Aaron Burr, who happened to be the person that killed Alexander Hamilton. So, that's amazing. And then I shot one scene in Sing Sing at the prison, when the hallway comes through. And then a lot of things were done in miniatures that I created. And then sets that I built, yeah.
What's your background?
My background is, I have an MFA in sculpture. I went to Yale for sculpture, and then my undergrad is in just studio art. And I'm from LA, and I went to UCLA. And my peers, or not my peers, my mentors at UCLA are like John Baldessari. He's a big supporter and great, amazing person and artist. And I'm trying to think of, he was a big influence on my work. But Joan Jonas, I was her assistant for a while, and she was a really big influence on me as well. So I definitely don't come out of a film background, although I will say that my dad worked in special effects in Hollywood. It was very much his, like Star Trek, he worked on that, and so I have a little glimpse into that, but I don't come out of film particularly. Yeah.
What made you to make the decision to sing everything by yourself instead of giving different characters different voices?
So that initially came about because of sort of the tests that I had done when I sort of did that first gallery show. I had just, that's what I do. I wrote the songs, and it was very much just a kind of like, well, this is what I have. I have these recordings. Let's see how this works. And it was so interesting. The reaction that I got was so interesting, and I thought the film was interesting. And I also tried to look for precedent to see if it had been done. And to this day, I still haven't found like a precedent for a fully sung, exactly by one voice kind of thing. And I thought that was interesting. I've realized now that like that made it hard for film festivals to understand it. You know, they were like, this is so confusing, because it would make more sense. It would be more like a traditional rock opera if it came out of other people's voices. And I had a few people say to me like, this is going to be really hard if you do it like this. And I just wanted to stick to my guns because I liked that.
This is the best part of it.
Yeah, I think so too. Or it's really, for me, one of the, I'm happy I stuck with that, yeah.
What, I mean, you obviously have a wonderful voice.
Thank
Did
you.
have training where you talked about sculpture and
Yeah.
undergraduate visual arts, but obviously you've had some
Well,
training.
the training is the school of rock. I've played in bands for years and years and years and years. And I've also like performed. I was always that person in the art school who was like, oh, you guys want to see me play some songs later? And I actually have like 12 albums that I've written. So I'm kind of an obsessive songwriter, but I never really knew what to do with all this music. And I had thought a lot about being a real musician and going that direction. But my friends that do that, and a few times that I've tried, the grind of being a musician, I'm just too lazy for that kind of like, you tour, and then album, record a new album, tour. It's just a very like almost regimented kind of life. And so my background is somebody who wanted to do this but avoid that. And I do have maybe like, I think a few bit of, like just a little bit of song singing training, but mostly I learned by listening to my own recordings and bad performances and thinking, oh, I should sing better than that. So
I thought one of the wonderful things about it is the production values, and I don't mean the bigger staging, but just how you use light, the simplicity of the space in which you selected. And you know, obviously that comes from your sculpture and from your installation, and that it works thematically quite beautifully without going over the top and being, I assume, reasonably budgeted. And that, and your singing, and all of it coming together like that is very remarkable. And I think an example to our students, you know, this can be done.
yeah, well, I'll tell you one
This kind of
thing.
value
Yeah,
up.
I think everyone should try to take their projects to their highest possible level. Really, I mean, I definitely had my doubts that I could do this, so that's cool. I'm really happy that you guys could watch this and think you can do it, and also that you can make a film and not come out of that background as well, because I think it's a really interesting time to be in media right now. Like, I think as artists or filmmakers or musicians, the whole markets for all three are changing, even galleries. Like, so I think the more inventive you can be, and also if you can, that was sort of the same thing I thought, if I can prove that I can do this by making it good. You know, a lot of people were like, you can't really do this. It's going to be like not going to work. So I figured, all right, I'm going to make it really good, and then you just can't argue with it. And that's kind of my
But you obviously
MO.
work with a good camera.
Yes,
person
yeah,
And a good lighting.
yes. The DP,
You can't do it
yeah.
all yourself.
Oh no, and I should say that part of one of the things about being a filmmaker, if now I have that head, is that you just learn how to get the people who are good at the thing you need, and that actually is, you have to make that your talent. Like, okay, my new talent is gonna be to get the right guy for this, and that's what I did with I have an amazing DP, and I love that about film actually, the collaboration, you know, to have a good DP. Although, I will throw one thing out there. This DP was a nightmare to work with, and at the end I switched to another equally talented but more mellow person. So try to vet your personalities a little bit, which is a hard thing to go into, but I'm continuing to collaborate with the second DP on this, who was very talented and mellow.
Do you have more film projects that you're interested in doing?
Yeah, I mean, I actually haven't, you know, I've focused so hard on getting this out there in the last couple of years that I finally started writing a new script that I'm working on and developing, and it yet again is going to be musical, which I'm very excited about, so yeah. Oh.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, your question's more important.
You talked a little bit about learning the hard way to get into film festivals. I wonder if you could speak about that briefly. And my other question would
Okay. So well, I'll just answer the second question first. The second, the budget overall, including current expenses, I would say, is within $100,000. So, which sounds insane when you think about it if you're just thinking about project, but actually for a film is ridiculously low. And but it was extremely hard for me to raise that money. I fought fought for it and convinced people who believed in my work, because having a fiscal sponsor allows you to be a nonprofit. So when you have nonprofit status, you can fundraise and you can get grants from big corporations that grant to nonprofits. They won't give you money, but like Ford or some major car company, or tobacco, I don't know if you want to, but whatever, you can get money from bigger organizations, and you can also get private donors to donate, and they get a tax write-off. So I recommend a lot of people do that now for small budget films. That's how I managed my budget. And then your first question was about film festivals. So for instance, I was in Berlin last week, and I had a meeting with somebody at the Berlinale, which is like the big film festival out there, and they said, oh, this would be so cool, but your film has a 2014 stamp on it. That's when it was officially done. And I didn't get into last year's Berlinale because I didn't properly, apply, meaning in terms of applying, I wouldn't blindly apply to anything anymore, which was how I originally did it. Like, I did apply to the Berlinale when my film was first done, and it got rejected like immediately. And in fact, I've gotten rejected from film festivals like Raindance originally rejected my film. And then I came back later and simply had a producer and several other people write letters on my film's behalf. And then they actually saw it, because these film festivals, they have like 13,000 submissions. So just imagine that. That's how many they have. You're going to apply and expect to just get in as a brand new filmmaker. That's going to be really tough. If you really believe that a certain festival is right for you, I would aim to try to meet somebody at that festival. Try to find another filmmaker that got into that festival, ask them who they know. Like, it is about people who you know. So you may, and I'm sure among all the people in this room, there's like 100 film programmers that we all collectively know. So try to find the right film festival for your film, but also be aware that if you're going to Europe, for instance, and you want to do like the top tier festivals, obviously those are incredibly competitive, but the Berlinale requires a premiere. So you can't get in it, like I will not be able to get into it with this film at all anymore because it has had a premiere. So be aware of what those, you can make a spreadsheet for yourself that says like when a different festival has what requirements. It's very frustrating, but I recommend working with like a partner or somebody who is good at this kind of thing if you're not good at it, or look up the dates, get that all very logically listed so you're not accidentally applying to this festival and then missing out on the chance to be in that other festival. That's what I mean. Okay, thank you everybody. Oh, sure.